All right, time for a little update. I haven't had one in a while because a lot of stuff I was doing was stuff under the car, getting stuff hooked up, and some of the little pieces inside, finishing up a bunch of trim stuff, and a whole bunch of little stuff like that, and got the bumper on. So just tons of little stuff like that. So wasn't really a lot for anybody to see. So that's why I didn't really do an update while I was doing a bunch of that little stuff. And I had been trying to work on the tune, but having a few issues with that. And Ray, who's a local tuner, had been kind of trying to help me a little bit, but he's one, super busy, and one, he admits, or the other thing is he freely admits he's not really a Ford guy. He's tuned a couple Fords, but he's more of an LS guy, so he was just trying to help me out with some general advice and stuff like that, but he's also really super busy right now, so couldn't really dedicate a lot of time to helping, but he was trying. And I was just struggling and couldn't get it to really run right or whatever. So I had reached out to the tuning school where I had taken some classes. Took them a little bit to get back to me, but they had shown a few things or give me a few suggestions, but that didn't really help. So I had reached out to the HP Tuner forums and had posted on there and had a few people help out with a few suggestions and a couple things for me on there, and that kind of seemed to help a little bit, but didn't really get me fully fixed. And then people kind of stopped responding, so I wasn't sure if they're out of ideas or just like basically like, man, this guy's tune's messed up, we don't know. So one of the guys that had reached out to me on the forum, or he had been giving me some suggestions, did say that, hey, he's like, hey, I'll help you and do a tune for you, but because I'm not going to do it for free. And so since people kind of stopped responding, I kind of reached out to him and talked to him, and he said he would do a tune unlocked, since they said I was trying to learn and do it myself, that he would basically help. He would do a tune unlocked so that I could see it, and he would help me get a bass tune going. I said I can take it from there. So, but he's actually over in Poland, and he said he had tuned some GT500s and 1,000 plus horsepower Gen 3 Mustang. So he had some experience. So him and I have been going back and forth. Some funny times since he's over there. He usually emails me at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. But he'd been kind of helping me, and we had been struggling really hard though, because we just couldn't figure out what was going on. And so the last few days, we kind of had a little bit of a breakthrough. We think because he had some injector data and that he thought was better, so he'd been using that. I had the ones from fuel injector development, and neither of the data really seemed to work. And so he had thought maybe there was a bad mass airflow sensor, but there doesn't look like there was. And so we thought a couple other little things, but as we got dug into it more, no, that wasn't it. And so what I decided to do was take one of the old tunes from Ray from last year before we had all the problems, and load it in just out of curiosity to see what happens. So I loaded that in, and lo and behold, no problems. And the problem I was having was that as soon as we got it to the point where it would idle, or it would try to idle by itself, it would go like 400, 1,000, 400, 1,000, but it would, so it wasn't steady, but at least it would go closed loop, because that was the main thing, is that it kept going injector cut, and it wouldn't go into closed loop. So therefore, because it was doing injector cut, it was running super lean, 28, 29, 30 lean, because it was cutting the injectors. And we got it to the point where all of a sudden now it would, if I didn't touch it and it got to the point where it would kind of just barely try and idle by itself, then it would go into closed loop and we wouldn't get any errors. But as soon as I touched the gas pedal, boom, it would immediately kick itself out and would go into this like limp mode. And so he was thinking maybe there's a problem with the throttle body, but I had said no. VMP had said it's a VMP throttle body, but they said you don't need any special programming or tuning. It should use the factory setup, no problems. And so we just kind of kept digging into it. And then, like I said, because of that, I'm like, I have an idea, because that tune actually had the two injector parameters, the low and the high, reversed. So I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to put those back. As soon as I put them back, boom, it started having the problem again. So I messaged him and I'm like, hey, whatever, this is not a hardware problem. This is definitely a tune issue, because here's what's going on. And as soon as I mess with just these two parameters, there's a, is a problem. And so he's like, well, that's very odd. So he'd give me he'd kind of guessed on some some injector numbers, and those didn't work. I spent a few hours today after the car show working on it, and I ended up basically just kind of going back and putting some of that injector data back a little bit at a time, kind of one element at a time, and it didn't make a difference. Do another one, didn't make a difference. Do another one, didn't make a difference. Finally got them pretty much mostly all back in, and then all of a sudden it started to work. So then I tried messing with the two numbers a little bit, and the low number, you touch it at all, it gets really unhappy. The high number, you can adjust a little bit and it seems okay, but then you adjust it too much and then it goes haywire. And he's not sure, because he's like, the low number should always be higher. It kind of sounds weird, counterintuitive, but the low number should always be higher than the high number. But for me, if I do that, it doesn't like it. So it's almost like there's a weird glitch in the display of the information, like it's actually reversed, like it's displaying reversed. So it's very, very strange. But he also had me increase the fuel pressure at one point. He thought that was maybe causing an issue. Doesn't seem like it is, but doesn't seem to necessarily hurt anything. So we increased it from 42.5 to 58 pounds on the regulator, because he thought that 42 was more meant for if you were not doing you're doing a returnless system. But he's like, with the return, I think we need to go higher. So that's been that. Sorry, some technical stuff there, but that's kind of where we're going on. But getting very close, hopefully. Hope to be able to get it to dry, or get it to idle and run by itself, so then I can get it out and get an alignment done on it. And then I can at least kind of taking it around the block a little bit, and hopefully get it going a little bit, so we can get some more data on it. One other thing that he had ran into real quick here, I know this is kind of getting long, but real quick, is that he's noticing that between the two basically rails and the two oxygen sensors, there is a good 15, sometimes 20% difference between the two. And when he asked me about how this is set up, and I explained that it comes up, goes into the regulator, and then it's got a return on there, but then it basically kind of comes into the fuel rail. There's no return like after the fuel rail like some of them do. This one just basically has one. It controls the pressure going to the fuel rails from the regulator, not like after, like some of them do, where it comes in, goes out, and then goes to the regulator and it controls it. This goes in, and he says he's had setups like that before, that one bank does tend to run a little bit lean because of that. And we were kind of seeing that, and it is of course this bank, because the fuel comes in over here and goes in, and by the time it gets over here, there seems to be a little bit of a pressure drop, and then so this one is running. They're running a little bit different. Actually, I take that back. How was that now? I can't remember now. I'm getting messed up. But one of them was running a little bit leaner than the other one. And he says he's actually seen that before, and that is a slight problem with this style. So one of the suggestions he had was basically to put a Y on it, and so that it would run, instead of running just to one, you would run a Y, and then it would go into both rails. So both, in theory, would have the exact same pressure. So I might think about doing that, and basically capping this end off, and then there's the tube behind that feeds this rail to that rail. So I might take that and put a Y on, and then split it basically so it goes to the back of both rails, and then in theory wouldn't have that, because that's it. So he said it's not a problem at this point, but when we really start turning it up and getting into the high boost and high horsepower, that's where there could be a problem. So with everything going on with this car and struggling with it, I'm just going to get it running for now. That may be something I look at when I switch to E85 and I really start turning it up and starting to get really pushing on it hard. That's when I may do that, but hopefully at this point it won't be too much of an issue. But kind of rambled on long enough. but just wanted to give you an update. It's been a while because, like I said, there was a lot of little stuff, cosmetic stuff I was buttoning up, getting the wipers on, and so like I said, some of the stuff inside, and just little things that were kind of hard to see, and then now working with the tune. But that's it. So thanks for watching and checking in on the update. All right, bye.